Okay. Ready?
Ready.
Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody from a different part of the world. Today is our first global chat from the Global Business Council of HGAR. Myself and along with Tony, we are the co-chairs of the Global Business Council. And we are honored to have a very good friend from Switzerland. I mean, we couldn't have anybody better to be able to explain how things and how the real estate business is done in Switzerland. So it is our pleasure to introduce Thomas Händler. And I'm gonna give you, Thomas, a couple of minutes so you can introduce yourself, and Tony will take over from the global chat and be able to run this interview and learn from Mr. Thomas.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon from Switzerland. So it's good morning. A new part of the planet. It's a great pleasure to be here. Should I start with my presentation?
I know, Tony, want to? Can we hear you, Tony? Do you have your mic?
Yes, okay, so I'll just start quickly. Thanks everyone for your patience. We had a few technical issues with our Zoom today. Obviously, Zoom is not as precise as those famous watches they make in Switzerland. So thank you for joining us. For all of you who are coming from Nigeria and Florida, Washington, D.C., and Colorado, and Portugal, and Arizona, and Switzerland, and all around the world, we really appreciate you joining us. This is our 4th year doing our global business chats. For those of you who have not been with us before, the purpose of our global business chat is not to talk about developments or properties for sale. What we're looking at is the real estate process in the country that we're focusing on. So we're looking at the nuts and bolts of the real estate transaction. So it's all about education. That's part of our mission statement with our Global Business Council, which is to provide our members with the tools and resources to connect globally with real estate professionals around the world. So that's part of the educational process. It's what we're offering here today. And we'd like again to welcome Thomas Händler. If you could give us a brief introduction as to your background, and then we'd love to start with some questions and answers.
Okay. I hope you can see my my screen now. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I give you some information about me. I started hands-on in a notary office, and I did some other studies after following that. I have a big experience in a general contractor company in Zurich. I became the head of real estate leasing for a bigger company in Switzerland, but it was always doing business in Switzerland. There were project developments, or there were buildings to construct, or there were also refinance existing real estates. Later on, I got the head of portfolio for a special portfolio, real estates bought at auctions. And this was really helpful because in the 90s, we had a big crisis in real estate, also in Switzerland. And there were a lot of bank clients were not more able to pay the interest rates. And then we had a lot to do. There were more than 2,500 auctions in these times. And there was a lot of work to do to handle all these real estates with a team of 25 employees. We had a great team. We did everything in this sense: buy, hold, and also sell the portfolio. This was the goal mainly. After a couple of years with realizing bad figures only, I need something more positive, and I switched to a large national construction group, and we had a lot of project developments to do there. So I got also the experience of developing major real estate projects in Switzerland, and I started in the middle of the 2000 years self-employed with founding my main company, IL Industry Leasing Ltd. Here I'm doing, you can see that, we structure leasing and investor solutions. We are looking for big commercial real estates for the best owner. We help to advise the boards of the operating companies to find the best solution for their financing, and also to structure the best, in the best way to structure the balance sheet concerning later following procedure in an M&A transaction or something else. I hope this was so clear so far. Let's go to the, here are some examples from the Swiss real estates that I handled and I realized, and they are all more than 10 million Swiss francs, but for a country with only 8 million people, it's a quite important part of the industry here. So let's start with the topic. Tony, will you ask some questions, or should I do it?
We can actually move on with your presentation, and of course, you know, we're assuming that those of us who are watching this program right now don't have a lot of information about the real estate process in Switzerland. So they may have a client they'd like to refer to someone, perhaps yourself, and they're looking for information and background on how the real estate process in Switzerland works. And I do have actually some specific questions for you, which you may likely address. But let's start with the very first step. I'm looking to introduce a client to a licensed professional in Switzerland. I'm assuming, and you can let us know, that all real estate professionals in Switzerland are licensed. Is that the case?
Yeah, you know, it's a little bit complicated. We have the framework of 26 different cantons, so there are states, and together we are the Swiss Federation. It's a little bit similar than the US, you know. You have Texas and New York City and all different states. Together you are the Federation, the United States of America, and we have the same structure. And in every canton, so as we call these states, we have different regulations. I'm proud to say that in the last years, we had big changes, that the old regulations from every canton is fallen, and it's more open than ever. The other side of the medal is that there are really no more licenses necessary to do broker business in Switzerland. Nevertheless, there are big associations of real estate professionals called SYIT and USPI. There are big associations with the brokers. The most important brokers of Switzerland are members of these associations. And these associations are given education, and also they are in charge to control and to monitor the members that everything is in respecting the ethics and codes that are given. There are differences also if it's if the client is a private one or is it a B2B transaction. If it's a private one, the protection of the client has a higher level than if it's a simple B2B transaction, because managers are professionals, and professionals should know the risks what are together with a transaction of real estate. Should we move on, Tony?
Yes, and if so, there are some protections, obviously, in the sense that if you're using a professional who's part of one of these two associations, that consumer can feel protected.
Yeah, this gives a protection to the consumer that the broker will respect all the law, the legal framework, and also the rules of these associations, the code of ethics, etc. That's important. Yeah.
Right, right. And so, of course, I mean, here in the United States, these days, when someone's interested in purchasing a property, whether it's a single family residence or maybe even an investment property, the first place they're going to look is online. They're going to realtor.com, they're going to Zillow.com, they're going to all a host of websites where they could find these listings, and many people are now starting their search there. What is the natural tendency in Switzerland? Are people starting with an online search engine? Are they starting with the broker? In New York State, for example, we have multiple listing services. In Switzerland, how are these properties listed? What access do consumers have to that type of information? Or do they just need to go directly to the real estate person?
Okay. As you see here, my answers to the question number 2, we have also search engines, and there are bigger ones and smaller ones, but I can say with these 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, URLs, you will find every property for sale in Switzerland, more or less. What we have is exception for luxury real estates. Sometimes are hidden and not shown to the public, because there are very important persons as owners, sometimes also owners from abroad, and I don't like that everybody, the neighbors, can see the details of the real estates for sale in the public. So for this reason, this is mainly the key reason that not every offer is to find by the search engines. But the normal real estates for families, for ordinary people living in Switzerland, they will find with no problem an offer here in the search engines. In the commercial area of the business field, in the business field of commercial, this is a little bit different, because if big companies coming from abroad looking for a new construction site or logistics site in Switzerland, they will never find the real estate by the search engines. They need to ask the specialists that are handling the clients of this sector, or in this sector, for this sector. And so it's the point 1 is correct, search engines. Point 2, luxury category, is mostly by agencies, handled by agencies. And the third point, not written here, is the commercial part of the business. If big companies are coming to Switzerland, or also Swiss companies are going to abroad, this is mostly by advisors done this business. I guess it's the same thing in the US. I don't know.
Okay, and I want to switch gears just a little bit before we get into the rest of the discussion, and that maybe we're jumping ahead a little bit, but I think maybe in this particular case it might be important to talk about what possible restrictions there are if you are a foreign buyer, because unlike the United States, if you're coming from Switzerland or any other country, there really aren't any restrictions. Anyone can buy property here in the United States. In Switzerland, it is a little bit different. So before we start looking at a property, I guess we have to discuss the Lex Kolar. So if maybe you could tell us a little bit about what those restrictions are before we go into the actual process of the transaction, that would be great.
Okay, you can see here, I hope you see the point 7 of the presentation. We have this legal framework called Lex Kolar, as you mentioned, and this is in the core, it's a protection for the Swiss people, that not every person from abroad can come and buy whole Switzerland, because Switzerland is very small. And if if the rest of the world likes our Alps and our big cities, we have not so much offer that we can sell everything to everybody. So the government has an important role to protect the surface of Switzerland, that it's not sold to the rest of the world. But nevertheless, there are some exceptions, and one big thing in this context is that if you are a citizen of the European community, so you are allowed, if you have a job in Switzerland, you are allowed, like a Swiss, to buy and sell real estates for your own purpose, you know. So this is allowed. Then we have also exceptions for people that are looking for some really luxury real estates in the hotspots of the tourism, because there are special regulations. It is not possible that we can protect 100% from the buyers from abroad. So there are easily there are procedures to get a permit. A special example for that is Andermatt. I don't know if you hear, if you have information about this destination. Andermatt was developed in the last few years from the Saviris, Orascom Saviris group, coming from Egypt. They've taken over the whole valleys there, less or more, and there was nothing. There was an old military site. No more necessary for the Swiss army. So there was a big question: what can we do with this so-called a little bit dead valley at the moment? And Mr. Saviris was really convinced about the quality of the destination after development, and he likes to make a big invest there, but he needs, on the other hand, the permit that he can sell the products to the rest of the world, and that was done. There are also other hotspot regions like Grindelwald, St. Moritz, Zermatt-Auvergne in the French part of Switzerland. There's also, let me give you some information about the commercial real estates. If you are founding here a commercial activity, it's also allowed to buy a commercial real estate. So if you have if you need for your business a logistics center or something, a hotel or an office building or a research building, it's fine. You can buy it with no restriction, also from abroad. I guess this makes the typical business for villas, for small residential houses. This is not a thing that can be international of interest. The market for point of view from abroad must be the luxury villas in this allowed areas, and also perhaps in special situations to be part of a transaction with commercial real estate. So this is the main field point of view from abroad, I guess.
Basically, if you're a foreign purchaser, you're really not going to be allowed to purchase in a place like Basel or Lake Lucerne or Zurich. The regulation is really pushing you toward the tourist locations, the ski resorts, those or any exceptional area that has that's permitted for foreign investment. Would that summarize what that rule is?
Yeah, you can say if it's not a touristic hotspot and if it's not commercial purpose of the real estate, it's really it's not so easy to buy from abroad. That's correct.
Okay. And so basically, if I'm looking here from the United States and I'm looking at one of those websites and I'm looking at these properties that look wonderful, those listings, are they going to tell me that this is suitable for a foreign investor, that this is in an area that's a hot spot that's permitted for foreign investment? Or I really do need to speak to a professional who could tell me, well, this is not really suitable for you because it's more residential.
So basically, if we have as an example a luxury villa for sale in Gstaad or in St. Moritz, it would be written in the information of the real estates. It's allowed for buyers from abroad. Mm-hmm. It's called no lex color requested or something like that. And this is very rare because this kind of real estates will be sold from these agencies, the specialized agencies like Sotheby's or Collier or the big chains of brokers. They have local branches and they are very well informed what's allowed and what's not. So the best thing would be have a look on the engine of the search engine, and then if you find something, you go to the broker directly locally to ask them, is this concrete real estate allowed for buyers from abroad? That's the way. But I have here, if you go back to the parties to the transaction, you see here, you have always the seller bring in directly or via a broker the information to the search engine, and then the buyer will have a look directly with no broker. If it's a Swiss buyer, of course he will not need a broker. He will go to the information of the search machine, and then he will go to the notary. Both parties are going direct to the notary, and they will sign the deed act, and then the thing is done. If it's a little bit more complicated and the seller is not very, he's not a digital guy, so he will go to a broker. Help me, please, to bring in all the things to all the search machines, and then the broker will do this work for the seller. And the buyer normally goes to his banker asking, "Hey, guy, is this fine for me? Would you give me a mortgage credit for the financing?" And then if the banker agrees, the buyer will go together with the seller to the notary. If you have a bigger transaction, the thing is more complicated because there are prices involved, advisors involved, consultants are involved, and the notaries are just after a big due diligence, the last part of the transaction to fulfill the deal at the end. So this is the structure, the main structure. But the most of business will done directly, seller, search engine, by a notary. If it's a small house or if it's just an apartment for the family, the mass business, let's say, is today done in this system. Okay, if it's a luxury real estate in St. Moritz, perhaps, I guess the seller, the buyer needs really an appraiser or the help of this broker to make sure that there will not popping up problems after signing the contract, because you need really to respect all the formulas and the procedure that that you need all the stamps from the officials, and then it's fine, you know. So it's not a big thing, but you need to ask the right people in the local areas.
So before someone begins the buying process, obviously they have a budget in mind. They're either going to pay cash, or if they don't have the cash, they're going to seek financing. Obviously, in many countries, it's always more difficult for the foreign investor to get local financing. What is the likelihood of a foreign investor, let's say from the United States, has a job, they're looking to finance a purchase of an investment property in Switzerland? What is the likelihood of getting financing for a purchase in Switzerland?
Yeah, thanks for the question. You know, if you are just an investor from abroad, the only thing that you can buy in Switzerland, allowed from point of view of the Lex Koller, is a commercial building, so like a shopping center or a logistic central or something like that. And if you have an investment in a commercial real estate, the banks in Switzerland will give up to 50 or 60% of the purchase price with a mortgage credit, and the equity has to be transferred to a bank account, a new bank account in Switzerland, with all the tests of no laundering money and all these things, and then it's fine. And then you can do the deal. Residential investments just for investment for people from abroad is sorry, not possible. So there's also no financing for that.
Understood. And it's not atypical from what we see in other countries as well. So we have the buyer, they've identified a property, they're paying cash. Let's assume it's a residential real estate transaction. What's the next step in making that offer?
Yeah, let's go back to making an offer. There's no regulation to do to bring an offer in a potential transaction. You can call by phone, or you can send a WhatsApp that you're interested, and you see the price X or Y, and then it's fine, but it's not valid. But everybody does so in the practical daily business, because you need to start. As you can see here, to create a valid offer, you need directly the public deed. Without closing in front of the notary a public deed, you will now have the right to be owner of this real estate. But if the seller accepts your offer by WhatsApp or by phone or whatever, you are going to the banker, you go to your appraiser, you have costs for the due diligence. And then if the seller says, it's not, I found somebody who pays more, for example, yeah, then the seller has to pay you the money back under circumstances that you, for the costs that you have for nothing. So this is an important point to know. If this is called culpa in contrahendo, if you have costs for due diligence or for coming to Switzerland to visit the real estate, and the seller, after accepting the offer by phone or by WhatsApp or email or with a letter, it's not so different. Then you have the right to get your money back if it was clear that the seller accepted before your offer. But sure that you will become the owner of the real estate is only if you have signed in front of the notary. That's the important thing. And this is also the moment normally the money will given to the seller, or with bank transfer or whatever.
Going back to the notary, and I think this is something that might be very unique to Switzerland. I'm not, maybe you'll be mentioning this, but one of the requirements is to get a foreigner purchase permit. Is that correct? In other words, if you're from another country and you are looking to purchase whatever property you're allowed to purchase in Switzerland, you need to apply for a permit first. Is that correct?
Perhaps I didn't understand your question correctly, but you are talking about a permit for purchase.
Yes. Is there a registration requirement? For example, if you are purchasing a property in Switzerland and you are a foreign buyer, is there a registration that has to be done first initially in order to proceed with that sale?
Theoretically not. You can go directly as a resident citizen of the US, for example, to the Swiss notary, present your passport, saying you're an investor from the US and you like to make the invest in the logistics side, for example. It must be real estate with commercial use. Mm-hmm. Then the notary will say, oh, fine. Can you give me a copy of your bill for water or something that you are living there, and I'm sure you are this guy who is written in the passport or something. That there's a know your customer procedure to do, and then you can go on. And it's not forbidden being from abroad to buy a real estate in Switzerland, but I repeat, there's a small offer where it is who can be subject of such a transaction.
And we have one question from one of our audience members. Is WhatsApp considered an official or secure site to put in an offer?
No, never ever. It's like calling, or it's if you have in a later step to claim for your costs that you had for nothing, so you need to show the judge or the court what will be your costs and what would be the concrete situation that you were sure that you will be the buyer of this real estate. So you need a lot of documents, of correspondences, not only this first WhatsApp communication, but I would recommend strictly to do these things by letters or with emails that you can give a proof after in a later step, you know.
And one other question that we had from the audience was whether the signing of the documents must be done in person. I mean, here in the United States, if you're going in front of a notary, it's a little bit different. Notary has a different role, different function here, but of course it has to be in person. I'm assuming that is the case in Switzerland as well. Any document that needs to be signed with the use of a notary must be in person?
Theoretically, you can give you call it, you can sign a document that allows that another person in Switzerland will sign in your name. So that's possible.
Okay, so a power of attorney, in other words.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, and in terms of the due diligence, we've got about 20 minutes left, and I know we still have a ways to go. But in terms of the process of the real estate transaction process, we've got an accepted offer. We've talked about the financing. When is the due diligence done? Is that something that's done before we get into the contract? Is it done after we sign a contract and we have a period of time to do the due diligence, whether it's a property inspection or whether we're looking to check the title? What step does that fall in?
The due diligence must be done before signing acts or deals, and then you have normally you will have an agreement with the seller that he blocks the real estate exclusively for you for 2 weeks or for 3 weeks. And then you have the right to check everything, to do this due diligence. And perhaps you will change your offer after the result. After getting the results of the due diligence, you will say, oh, I pay less because there's a problem or there's something other as described. And so you have to discuss the price finally before you will sign. It's also possible to go to the notary, make a preemption agreement that blocks really the real estate for you for a half a year, for 3 months, for a period to define. It's free to define a period for that. And that allows you to really make the due diligence until under the ground to check everything. And but in this case, you will have to pay, you have to do a down payment that will be gone if you will not realize the transaction until the end. So you can go step by step. It's in the Swiss law, it's possible. It's depending how big the real estate is, or is it a new construction? Is it an existing building? This is different normally for the structure of the transaction, as everywhere in the world, I guess.
And how does a foreign buyer, get recommendations in terms of who does this due diligence? For example, here in the United States, I could say, Thomas, I'd like to sell you the Brooklyn Bridge. Here's a deed. I've signed it. I've notarized it. You give me money. The Brooklyn Bridge belongs to you. But if I don't own the Brooklyn Bridge and you don't know that, that could be a problem for you. So we get title search. We get title insurance. Is there a similar process in Switzerland where there is a search on the history of the title of the property and insurance? And how do we go about that? Same thing with inspections. Who does the? Is there a licensed person that does the?
No, this is relatively simple in Switzerland. We had since years a land register that is really up to date, and everybody has the right to look to this land registry, who is the owner of what. So it's not, you see immediately if the Brooklyn Bridge is owned by this so-called seller or not. And every notary in Switzerland will check or double check the situation of the starting point, who is owner of what, before he will prepare a notary act or in this sense, the buyer is completely protected point of view doing business in Switzerland in real estate.
Got it. Excellent. And once we have that, so we're doing the due diligence beforehand, then we go into contract, we have a signed agreement. What is the timeline for closing? What can we expect as a foreign buyer? 3 months, 4 months, 2 months?
So as I explained, or I tried to explain how complicated Switzerland is with 26 different frameworks for legal and taxes. And so we have a complicated structure different from canton to canton. And if you have benchmarks like Canton Zug, this is a thing 1 week, 2 week, the owner is in the land registry noted, and then he's owner and the thing is done. In other cantons, you need 6 months to do the same thing. So it's very different where you are in Switzerland, where the real estate is located. Sorry to saying that, but this is the result of a very complicated development from the different cultures and parts of Switzerland. We have the mixture here from the law of the Romans, and we have the German BGB, the book of law of the the notary system of Germany and the notary system of France and the notary system of Italy are coming together in Switzerland. So it's very interesting to look where you are in Switzerland. So it's more similar than like in Germany, or it's more similar like in Italy, and the consequences are also on the timeline. So it's the same thing.
I was advised that the Italian part of Switzerland operates much more quickly and efficiently than the rest. Is that true?
I would say no, because the bureaucracy is a little bit more complicated in this area than in other parts.
And in terms of the transaction, once we've closed on the transaction, we're the owner of this property. What can we expect as owners in terms of taxes? Also, what can we expect, and what can we expect to spend in terms of closing costs? So we've got closing costs and we've got taxes that we pay moving forward. How does that work in Switzerland? I'm assuming that the taxes are going to be paid at the federal level, the canton level, maybe even the communal level.
Yeah. Once again, it depends from canton to canton. We have taxes for the transaction, and then we have taxes to be owner, and it's very different in both categories. The same cantons, they have a low taxation for the transaction, have also a low tax number for the owners. So there are more socialist cantons with a higher with higher taxes also for the transaction and also for being owner of a real estate. And you see here as an example, when you have a transaction in the canton of Zurich, you have only to pay the paper of the contract and no tax for the transaction itself, but you have to pay for the entry in the land register, and so it's a small fee. It's perhaps 0.05%, so it's nearby nothing. If you're going you have the same transaction in a canton of the French part of Switzerland, you pay up to 4% of the purchase price. So it's between 0 and 5%. You can have everything. It's very depending where you are in Switzerland. Same thing is also with the taxation of the value after being owner. There are cantons with higher tariffs and such one with lower ones. So it's very important to check it with the due diligence before you buy something where you are. For that, I guess you need a specialist from for example, FIAPSI. We have some representatives all over Switzerland, and these guys are very informed what is the reality of and what was the expectation perhaps in the beginning of the transaction.
And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box, and we'll share it with Thomas. And Thomas, you in your presentation, you note that there's a tax on the net income. So basically, if there's a profit, there's a tax that needs to be paid on a profit that you make.
Yes.
On a property that you own in Switzerland. Assuming that you're owning a property in a resort area and you want to use it for yourself predominantly, what if the investor decides, hey, I want to rent this out through Airbnb or some similar system like that?
Then it's simple. Then it's like a business, a small business or a big business, and every company is also subject. Has to pay taxes in Switzerland as if you have a shop to sell shoes or something else. If you have a real estate that is rented out and it's commercial, you have a bookkeeping with a net income at the end of the year, I hope, and then you have to pay taxes on this net income. That's it. Okay, if you have a big value, there's also a tax on the value, a small tax on the fortune. It's not, let's say, it's like a capital tax, but it's also very different from canton to canton. It's impossible to give you an answer for all Switzerland. The best thing is call me and I will give you the figures if you have concrete requests for information. Thanks.
Wonderful. And of course, we do have your information that we're going to be sharing with everyone with your permission. And this global chat is recorded, so it's going to be on our website. So anyone that's interested in reaching out to Thomas will be able to do that with any questions that they have. So Thomas, I'll let you continue just to wrap it up because we do have only about 9 minutes left. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about commissions, working with other brokers who are referring clients to you or to other brokers in Switzerland.
Yeah, theoretically, we have the freedom of trade and commerce. So it's a dealing thing between the seller and broker and buyer. What will be the fee? A commission. But the tax authorities have covered that just of the figure of 2% of the purchase price will be accepted in the calculation to define the tax. So nobody in Switzerland is willing to pay more than this 2%. That's normally, this is usual. And with the new systems of search engines and also robots, who are doing, the robots are doing the broker business, this 2% now is becoming lower. So it's perhaps 1%, 0.5%, it's no more. But for bigger transactions, major transactions with international background, I guess the 2% will be the right figure. And sometimes the seller is paying the 2% to his broker and the buyer is paying 2% to his broker if two brokers are involved. That's possible and the best way for the brokers, but it's not always the case. It could also be 2% and they have to split. It's also usual.
And of course, in all transactions, you always want to communicate with that other cooperating broker and make sure you have that agreement in writing.
Yeah, these agreements are always the best, have it in written form. And the serious brokers will always have written contracts for his mandate. That's clear.
Wonderful. And we have another question from the audience. What is in, not sure, maybe you don't know the answer off the top of your head, but how much foreign investment is coming into Switzerland annually, given that there are some restrictions on what can be purchased?
Perhaps I didn't understand the question. So can you repeat, please?
How much foreign investment is coming into Switzerland annually? And I'm assuming the question is referring to real estate investment only.
Yeah. It's not so much. I have to estimate here, but I guess if I take this 6 tourism hotspots and I take 5 or 10 commercial deals, it would be perhaps 100 or something a year. It's not so a big business, you know.
Right. Okay. And another question we had, where are most buyers coming from? That's an interesting question. You mentioned that if you have citizenship from any other country from the EU, you might have less restrictions than what a US buyer might have. Is that correct?
Yeah, the restrictions are given, and let give me a second to go to the Golden Visa program. That is also a question. Theoretically, we have no Golden Visa program, but there are some exceptions also in the big hotspots. And this is nice to know for perhaps your brokers or people from abroad. If you are retired or if you're owner of a big company, but you are no more working yourself, you have theoretically a way to live in Switzerland just of the basis of the costs of your life. So the big income that you can make worldwide will not be subject of the taxation for Switzerland. This can be a very big advantage. I give you an example. You know, perhaps the company IKEA, the Swedish the Swedish house selling the beds and the chairs and everything worldwide, and the owner family was living or is living in Switzerland, so they have no not to pay the big taxes as perhaps in Sweden or in another place on the world on earth. So it's very individual. With other words, you have to really to call this the advisor here in Switzerland and to make this thing for your individual case clear before you go to a plane and come here and spend a lot of money. So it's very important to be clear what we are talking about before you go to make the trip here. But you're very invited, that's that's for sure. There are applications by case in case. It's what I said before. So it's you need retirement age 55 years on up, and then we can discuss that if you like it. The citizens of the European community have advantages. They can buy more easily. Yeah, what is also important, the question here, you like to say something to that?
Yes. So basically, as members of the National Association of Realtors, we have a special program, there's special designation for those who take the appropriate courses, and that is the CIPS designation, which is a certified international property specialist. This group of individuals, are over 4,000 of them all around the world, probably at least over 1,000 of them, 1,000 CIPS designees who live outside of the United States. And they have a referral market. They refer to each other. Has it been your experience to work with foreign brokers or agents who have the CIPS designation? And are you seeing that there's a value to that? Or is it just a small market, as you said? Too small.
I have doubts that it makes sense to create here a big structure for that or something like that. We have these destinations, as I mentioned, St. Moritz, Andermatt, Verbier. There are local people, local brokers, as a specialists to handle buyers from abroad. They have the experience. There's a daily business for them, you know. And if you have clients from your side and you are a broker in the US, the best thing will be to do a call from broker to broker and build up a connection for this requests of your client. And I'm sure the big names in this destinations will do a great job and help to come to the end and to the success of this transaction.
Okay. One last question before we wrap it up. We have 1 minute. We have one other question. Does Switzerland offer anything like an EB5 visa? I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. That's a type of a visa that's offered here in the United States to foreign investors. It might give you certain benefits, opportunity to gain citizenship, residency if you invest a certain amount. Is there a similar type of visa program in Switzerland? I think you said there's no golden visa program, but perhaps if it's something that's more commercial oriented, there might be a similar type of program.
Yeah, no, we have not really a program, but we have a framework for the people coming from abroad. And the first thing is always they need a job or a lot of money. So this is the first hurdle. And then if you have a job or if you have a lot of money, the due diligence starts that you will become a residency permit. And it's not really depending if you are buying a real estate. You can also have a permit for the residence if you rent only an apartment or something. There's no connection between buying something and to get a permit. This is perhaps a difference to other countries where you can buy for $1 million something and then you get the permit automatically, not depending where you are, where you're coming from. This is not so in Switzerland. It's more complicated once again.
Great, wonderful. Thomas, thank you so much. That was really very, very informative. The presentation is wonderful. We are actually going to post this recorded Global Business Chat on our website so that it becomes part of our Global Business Chat library. We will be including this written presentation, PowerPoint presentation that you created. If that's okay with you, we can post that on our website as well, make that a part of our library. And of course, your personal contact information will be included. So if anyone who joined us today is interested in reaching out to Thomas, that his contact information will be available to you. So thank you very much, Thomas. I really appreciate the time that you spent with us. And thank you, everybody that joined us today from around the country, around the world. And I just want to mention two upcoming events that we have that we're in the process of putting together. Of course, we do our Global Business Chats every other month. We do a Global Business Chat. We have two special events that we're going to be doing. One is going to be actually both of them are going to be in March. We are proud to have a delegation that's going to MIPIM in Cannes, France in the middle of March. So we will most likely be doing a program at MIPIM so that if you have not been to the MIPIM conference, we are going to explain that to you. So we're looking forward to putting that together. We also have a delegation from Hudson Gateway who will be at the Dubai Expo toward the end of March, and we're going to be doing a similar program live from Dubai. So we hope that you join us for those two events as well. We'll be putting that information in our website, and we'll be sharing it with you via social media as well. So we hope to see you for those future programs. Thanks again for joining us.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas. Okay, we go to the other link, right?
Yes, please join us on the other Zoom meeting link, Global Business Council members. Thank you all for joining us.